Good morning, everybody. It's so nice to see everyone. The Stanford Accelerator for Learning's Equity and Learning Initiative had the great privilege and honor to host students, middle school and high school students, and their educators yesterday with the support of Google.org. We had a youth-powered AI Day of Learning, and let me tell you, we learned a lot from and with each other. And so I'm really excited to moderate this panel with 3 of our educators who participated in our Day of Learning yesterday. So first, I'm going to invite you to introduce yourselves and say something about the work that you're doing with AI in teaching.
Okay, well, hello everyone, my name is Ludwig Lintz, also known as Lulu. I am the Manager of Program Impact at STEM from Dance. We are a nonprofit where we integrate technology and movement, essentially allowing for students to take these different workshops so that they can also learn how to combine using dance to bridge their knowledge of STEM. And most recently, we also have included AI into our work.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Daniela DiGiacomo. Nice to see you all. I am an associate professor at the University of Kentucky. That is my day job in learning sciences and youth development with a focus on civic engagement, information literacy, and student voice. But my fun or after hours or night job, I think, and the reason I'm here is that I help run and organize the Kentucky Student Voice Team, which is a youth-led nonprofit in Kentucky fighting for educational justice for about the last 15 years as research, storytelling, and policy partners. And my role with them is actually supporting them to do youth-led research on issues of interest to them, which this year happens to be, shocker, student perspectives on AI in learning, and that's the study I'll talk about a little bit today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Taubman, and my teaching journey started here 21 years ago. I was in the STEP program at the GSC. It's really fun to come home. I spend sort of half my day as a teacher at North Star Academy in Newark, New Jersey, where I work with 98 juniors and seniors every day in a program that explores the intersection of AI, purpose development, and career-connected learning. And then the other half of the day, I'm helping to lead our network-wide AI instructional strategy at Uncommon Schools, which is what my school is part of, which is one of the biggest charter networks in the Northeast.
Terrific. And so, Mike, we'll start with you. Give us a little more insight about how AI is showing up in the day-to-day, on the ground, in your teaching.
Yeah. We are working on an AI framework we've built called the AI driver's license. And the idea is to map that quintessential adolescent rite of passage, getting your driver's license, onto this AI moment. And so the curriculum has 4 parts, which I'll explain in a sec, but we're really fortunate to be collaborating with Dr. Faye-Marie Vassell, who's a postdoc fellow here at the GSC and High, to explore formally what the learning environment is that this curriculum creates. The curriculum has 4 parts, and the whole idea, as you can imagine, is to get students into the driver's seat and not the passenger seat when it comes to AI. The first part, my favorite part, is choose a destination. We want students to look inside themselves, look at the world around them, and decide where they want to go with AI before they open the tool, to have a reason to go somewhere. When you get in a car, you don't discuss with the car where you're going. I know we're in Waymo land, but even so, you've chosen the destination. We want students to feel that way about AI. Part 2 is learn how to drive. How do these tools work? What does it mean to prompt, to provide context, to orchestrate agentic workflows, et cetera? Part 3 is open the hood. How are these technologies working, and what, therefore, are the implications for students? What are their affordances? What are their limitations? And the last part is, I was an English teacher for 18 years, this is my other favorite part, is discuss, debate the rules of the road. We want students to start considering, discussing with each other, discussing with others in this space, not just what AI can and can't do, but what AI should and shouldn't do, so that they start to realize that their voices matter right now, and they can start to take part in shaping this world they're graduating into.
I want to be in your class.
Yeah.
Daniela?
Yeah, so for me, as someone who supports young people to do youth participatory action research, or what a lot of people call YPAR, a strand of community-based research, I have to think thoughtfully every year about how to support young people around the issues that really matter to them. And over the last 6 years since I moved from California to Kentucky for the job, the interests that matter to young people you'll all be familiar with, but when it comes to schooling, has a lot to do with their mental health, well-being, and their ability to connect in the world. And we know that COVID sort of exacerbated all of that. or exacerbated all of the inequities that we know exist in schools. And so what we see year after year, from the school climate audits that the students lead in schools across Kentucky to state level audits and studies we do focused on how students feel about the banning of CRT or different hot topics that go on, is that they are, I think as some speakers said earlier, like the same issues that we think about in terms of what matters for teaching and learning still matter for students today. And I think what I'm curious about that's coming up from what we see in the students' research is how AI can be supportive of those, help us collaboratively work through some of those same problems.
Thank you.
So yes, at STEM from Dance, we are actually aiding students with crafting different promptings of AI-generated videos. So they are actually learning how to ultimately output these different type of videos that work as digital backgrounds, as they also take different workshops to choreograph their own performances and pieces, utilizing the AI that they are generating as their backdrops or background dancers, as some may say. So really cool and fun things, obviously, that they are doing, but also knowing that there are hindrances and there are ultimately, down effects of AI, and still trying to make sure that these students know that ultimately AI needs to work for them. So it's not just utilizing it as some sort of clutch, but more so like, okay, how are we ensuring that they have the tools and resources to actually make AI work for them? But that also, personally, I believe, comes with making sure the educators themselves are equipped to do so as well. So I think that's one of my biggest challenges right now that I'm facing, is making sure that the educators that I work with equally are partnering with AI and also have the knowledge and resources they need to support the students that they are centered in front of each day.
This is something I really appreciated yesterday. We had classroom teachers, we had nonprofits who work and bridge their work with classroom teacher partners. We had public, private, charter schools represented, and so many student learners. If you were one of the middle schoolers or high schoolers who participated with us last week, can you just stand up? I want to acknowledge you again. Can you stand up? Yes. Where's our young people? Yay. Thank you so much for being here. And my next question is, what are you learning from these young people about AI?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I think for me personally, what I've learned over the past years, especially having some of my background definitely start in the classroom as an educator myself prior to my current role, is that AI is not actually inherently bad, right? Instead, we should be making sure that students are actually still given the proper cognitive skills to make sure that they're actually making AI, like I said, work for them, right? So like, how do we make sure that they're able to utilize AI as this type of scaffold and giving them the feedback that they need to really sharpen the skills that they need to obviously go out into the real world, rather than this idea of, AI is something that we need to completely remove, because that's not happening, unfortunately, right? I think it's here, and we have to ensure that the educators themselves are also able to evolve with the technology that we have in place to really make sure that, students are actually utilizing AI with caution, but most importantly, making sure that it is actually something that supports their education growth.
Yeah. And so I'll speak to two themes that are coming out from our data so far. So we're actually in the midst of running a state-level mixed method study, of which the survey and interviews are designed and carried out by students with their peers across the state. And so far our survey has 850 responses, and it's a mix of open-ended and Likert-style items. And then we are about to start to conduct hopefully up to 40 to 50 interviews that are also peer-to-peer, focused on this question of what are their perspectives and attitude about AI in their learning lives. So two of the things that are coming out, I fear are going to be unsurprising for this group, but are that students want their teachers to support them in how and if and when and in what ways to use AI for their learning. So we know they're doing it in and outside of schools, but students are also aware of the instructional puzzle that this presents for their students or for their teachers, and they want support and vulnerability from the teachers in making visible that they need support in their learning with that. The second theme comes from the fact that there's a lot of variability when it comes to school level policy. Folks know that. So the AI policy looks different within schools, between schools, across schools, across teachers. And that's really challenging for students because what they're saying is that we don't know if we can use it in this class, can we use it in this class? It's an unfair advantage in this class. What does it look like in that class? And I think that's not a small thing to also consider in this because I think students are grappling with the same sort of ethical considerations that we are as adults in terms of what is this? Is it cheating? Is it not? Everything from applying to college to applying to work at a fast food restaurant. If a peer is using it and I'm not, what's the right thing? What's the right move to do here? So I think they want space and time and scaffolded adult support to talk through those questions that have more to do with sort of the philosophical question around it rather than the technical as well.
Yeah, I'll have more anecdotes from this AI driver's license pilot later. We just started last week.
Terrific.
But from my own classroom, what I've noticed the last few years is, first of all, and one of the professors mentioned this earlier, students are really hungry to look at this as a tool and a topic. And when whiteboards came in or Chromebooks came in, those weren't topics of discussion in class. You just used them. This wants to be both, and I think students need it to be both, and that's something that I think is important to think about. Two specific anecdotes, what I'm learning from students watching them use this, come from the two students who kindly flew out to California with me for this, Ian and Brianna. Ian has been working with a partner to vibe code an app called Fractal that visualizes the research process via expanding nodes that change colors, et cetera. So I'm watching this as a teacher the last few weeks, and I'm wondering, what are they learning about both research and also AI? And what was striking to me is that AI has sped up for Ian and his friend the idea to implementation to iteration process. Like that's now really fast. The app just gets coded in class. But it hasn't sped up, in a good way, the thinking and collaborating they're doing. So they set the tool off to code, and then they're discussing what to do next. And I think as a teacher, it's really interesting to watch. Something's gotten faster, but something hasn't, in a good way. Brianna has been exploring a career in finance and sports management, and so she wanted to create a contract for Pete Alonso. If you're an East Coaster, he was a star on the Mets for a while, one of Brianna's favorite players. She wanted to be his agent, hypothetically. I am an English teacher by trade. I've never created a major league contract. So in that moment, we turned to our AI assistant, and the AI, Brianna had the AI make a template of a contract, but not fill in the details. Number one, because it kept getting his stats wrong. But number two, because she said if she was actually his agent, it was her responsibility to get the contract right and to fill in those details. And so to me, again, as a teacher, I'm watching that, and I'm seeing AI open a door, but then I'm seeing Brianna walk through it. And I think that's a really interesting way that we now have a possibility, basically, in classrooms to explore.
Something that came up yesterday that was very interesting is this question about whether there was this fear that AI was going to take over teachers' jobs. And our colleague Nathan was suggesting that the future potentially looked like teachers more as coaches during this time. And I'd love to get your thoughts around if you've been thinking about this or how you sort of see the future of teaching with AI in play and this notion of moving into more of a coaching role or support role.
I mean, I can't say if AI is going to necessarily take over the job of educators, but what I can say, right, is if we as administration or individuals that are putting out these different pilots of AI, it's our duty to ensure that educators are equally equipped. So rather than sitting and bustling with educators on their content, right, on how they're delivering the content, I think it's about the different tools that are now, ever evolving and coming into the classroom. How do we actually coach and teach them to utilize these tools so that it can work for the students who are going to be battling with these tools, that are going to be competing with these tools, right, on whether they're actually going to have these type of jobs. I think especially because students are thinking about this, it's our job and responsibility to take action in this moment in time, to take a step back, but also want to ensure that we are equipping ourselves with how are we making sure that students still are having these jobs and they're not worried. I think for a very long time, I brought this up yesterday, this idea where we hadn't thought about what do you call it, self-checkout machines, right? For a really long time, we had cashiers. Now, all of a sudden, self-checkout is a huge thing. You go into supermarket stores, things of that sort, and no one thought about the fact that these were taking people's jobs up until it actually did. And I think rather than waiting until the jobs are taken by AI, we need to ensure that we're doing our due diligence to ensure that students are equipped with that knowledge. I think someone mentioned yesterday as well, this concept and idea of really making sure that, like, we know AI has these different, like, there's screeners, there's recruiters, like, technically all our resumes are like being screened through these type of AI generators, right? So those are already taking up jobs. So if we can get ahead of it right now while we're still in the early stages and phases of this new technology advancement, I think that's really our due diligence to make sure that our students are not competing with these different AI tools when it comes down to the job market.
Yeah, that's good. I think as a learning scientist who was trained in the sociocultural tradition, I think that our job is to think about, what we know about how people learn, which is even more complex today in terms of living in the information and digital age, and then what that means for how we ought to design learning environments in and outside of school. And so I think if we continue to think, which a lot of people have said today is like call in the learning sciences, I appreciate that shout out because no one knows about the field outside of these spaces. But if we continue to think about how people learn, and we think about how people learn in a digital age, in a hyperpartisan age, that should actually amplify the need for better pedagogical and instructional strategies, right? And we know that learning is fundamentally cultural and social. And so I actually think it brings up the need for more and better teaching.
To me, I've had kind of two big thoughts about this. One is this tension you mentioned about the coach versus teacher. Mm-hmm. And I do think that's something a lot of educators are wrestling with right now. I feel it myself. When Brianna's making that contract, I can't teach her how to write a major league contract. So I am guiding her through that experience using my educator instincts, but it's a new topic. So there is a level at which this does push us in a good way to that sort of guide coach space. At the same time, I do worry that if we all become guides as teachers, who's teaching? And that's a question, like as an English teacher for 18 years, I think it's even more important to teach thinking, reading, writing, choosing your own words to express your ideas. I think that's a really crucial skill right now, but it's a real tension because I'm helping Brianna do that, but I also want to make sure everyone is remembering the old ways we used to do things and bringing those forward. And I also think there's just a change management question there. If you tell a lot of teachers that they're not teachers anymore, they're coaches now, some of us would love to jump into that, some of us would be nervous, but some people would say, well, I just spent my career teaching. And I think it's an interesting question to raise. Mm-hmm. On a sort of broader level, I always think when the students come in that we have 45 minutes together. How am I going to use that time? What's my lesson plan going to be? And the emphasis for me used to be on how to use the 45 minutes. In the last year or so, it's really started to feel like we have 45 minutes together. And the together part is what's really mattering now. When we can have screens involved, we can use AI, we should sometimes, but that is a human space. That the classroom is taking on an almost sacred dimension for me now, where it's people gathering together to be young and human together and grow up together and learn to argue in a very complicated country together. And I think that is increasingly a space that education should be exploring in addition to pedagogy and content.
That's really powerful. Yeah.
Thank you.
I remember yesterday, Kendall from Cambridge Latin talked about how important the togetherness was becoming. It was taking a priority to everything else. Being more relational is becoming more important in this moment in her classroom. I'm curious about what it is that you each need in this age of AI to support your own learning, to support your teaching. What is it that you need and need access to?
That's a good question. I think as far as like nonprofits, we need the actual individuals, right, the makers of these tools, to also be equally on the ground as much as educators are. I think oftentimes, like, we think, okay, we'll just give in a few training sessions, but like, obviously that's not enough, right? I think there needs to be a more hands-on involvement and collaboration that goes into place when we think about the developers of these tools with the collaboration of the educators who are then placed in front of students to teach them and educate them. So I think it needs to be that level of collaboration that is involved if we really want to ensure that our students are utilizing AI to work for them, but also, as like Mike said, these coaches, right? These thought partners that we want AI to actually be for us, rather than this idea of just kind of like using AI to do all of the work, but actually teaching AI what you want it to do.
And my initial reaction was to say, I need someone to teach my 7-year-old how to spot a fake Taylor Swift ad on YouTube, because I can't do that. But I guess my real answer is that I think, 6 years into working as an adult ally for the Student Voice team, in a state like Kentucky that's smaller, we've made some really big strides in terms of ensuring that students are at the policymaking table when it comes to students on school boards, on Kentucky Board of Education. And even though it's just one student and then you ensure they have voting power and these things, these are small levers of which you try to ensure that student voice is at the table. And I feel like throughout the day, we keep hearing like it's really important. The decisions are made about schools need to be made with students. And so I think that would be the one thing I would say is in all of us in our small bits of the world to try to work to amplify the student voice.
And I think your 7-year-old's going to be okay. Did you hear all the young people yesterday were telling us stories that they're now doing all of this quality control for their parents. They're having to tell their parents, that's fake, Mom, that's fake, Dad, that's not real. So now the tables have turned, right?
I think it's always taken a village to raise a child, and I think we need that village a lot right now. For example, the fact we're able to partner with Dr. Vassal and explore, we have an idea about AI literacy, we have a chance to pilot it, but let's get a researcher to look at what's happening here. Again, I was an English teacher for a long time, and I've leveled up my AI ability, but I'm an AI autodidact. And it would be amazing if also somebody from industry came in and trained us in the technical sides of this, because educators are coming in as educators, not as tech people. Nonprofits being able to fund these kinds of research opportunities. So I think if we're all gathering together, and then crucially, to your point, making space for student voice, whether that's surveys, whether that's interviews, whether that's looking at the sort of voice that emerges from how they use the chatbot and looking at the sort of breadcrumbs there. But I think this is the world that we are shaping for them, and they have a right to shape it too, and to have a sense that they have agency in this moment.
Thank you so much for that. So what are you excited about for the future of AI in teaching and learning? What excites you the most? Where are the possibilities and opportunities? What are you dreaming about, thinking about with your students?
I think personally for me, knowing that specifically STEM from Dance, our entire mission and vision is to really ensure that girls of all backgrounds, right, have this access to STEM fields. I think that's what excites me the most when I think about AI right now, is like really ensuring that these students have this level of access. They have the tools, they have the knowledge and resources to really gain access and leeway, which, something that didn't have opportunity to do many years ago, or especially women didn't have that same level of access many years ago. I think it's like this new range of STEM, right? It's not like, just coding. It's like this new whole genre, right? That students can now also be experts in to allow them that access and just overall level into these real world jobs where they also too can be affluent in.
Yes, I think I would lean a little bit on the last speaker's presentation where we talked about creativity versus hindrance, and I could say I'm hopeful around the potential for it to create more time and space individually and collectively for creativity amongst our young people. So in whatever discipline, in whatever field, I think schools can sometimes do a good job of not encouraging as much creativity because of all the constraints. And so I think if we can shepherd AI toward supporting the production of more creative time for all of us, that would be helpful.
Did some of the data in your participatory action research study with your students yield something around that?
It does, because they are concerned that, so far it's saying it, and that they are concerned that they're openly saying it's concerned that it's hurting all of ours collective critical thinking and ability to sort of work together. And so I actually think we can sort of take back that narrative also, because I think that is a real fear. I have that fear as well. But we also know that it's a tool that's human made that we can shape, and we are part of the design process. So I think thinking about how to push against that as a system is what we ought to be doing. Yeah.
Thanks.
I would say on a practical level, the personalization that AI provides in classrooms, I mean, I teach a career exploration class, so it's especially useful there, but I can have 34 students in 10 minutes reflect on their individual sense of purpose with an AI chatbot that I design, close the laptop, turn to the person next to them, talk about their reflections, and then embark on a project in one period. That's not normally how that works. And so that is really powerful, but I think what's even more exciting to me as educators, as many of you know, we're constantly trying to convince students of the relevance of what we're there to teach. And you don't have to do that right now. They know this is relevant, and so the relevance is there, and so now it's more like we are living through a historical moment together, us and you, and let's try to make sense of this and put you in a position to succeed at this time.
I love that. That's such a powerful thought, that you're living through this historical moment together and you're making sense of it together. That co-learning with your students is very powerful.